Way.
Okay, all right. So I would think by this point, you're at GroupBy 2020. Uh, Thanks for coming. I know virtual conferences are all the rage right now, but GroupBy was doing this before it was cool slash
Right?
mandate. Yeah, you got. I think this is
Before
what,
before it
three or
became
four
like the
years ago.
sourdough starter of techies, right?
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I'm really excited. I've submitted sessions before, so I was excited to get picked. I think this topic's kind of cool. The fun I have, and you may wonder what topic that is. It's this one. What's fun about this is I've done it at a couple SQL Saturdays and gotten notes both times where people were like, "Man, I had no idea you could do that." I went back to my team, talked about some of the stuff that you showed. We, built on it to do a bunch of cool stuff. Thank you. So it's always fun to talk about a topic that people may or may not know about or may not have been exposed to. So even if you're not a DBA, I'm going to show some notebook basics. I think Julie has a more general notebook talk on the other track at 3:30. So she'll probably get into more of the development type stuff. Mine is kind of targeted to DBAs, but we're going to learn markup and some of those basics as well.
Yeah, the thing I like about this a lot is, I don't know if you've ever seen Monica's like lone DBA session, but you know, it's hard to take vacations as a DBA. And so knowing that you have not only documentation for how to handle emergencies, but documentation with a run button, like that's awesome. Because you need someone to be able to do this stuff while you're out.
Right, right. Yeah, and I'll talk more as we get to those slides,
Yep.
not only with a run button, but even how you can persist it and all those sorts of things. These are really, really cool. You've not come here to learn about me, but you're going to just for a minute here. So I'm Matt. I work for Insight Digital Innovation. My email address will be at the end. So if you want to reach out that way, I welcome it. I'll take any feedback on the session at all. What I usually say is, if you think the session was great, tweet that. If you think it was terrible, email me. Don't tweet that because I don't want everybody to know. But seriously, I'll take feedback in whatever format. This is a pretty new session, so obviously there's things I can build on, things I can change, and all that. And the whole point is for it to help folks. So if you can think of a way that can be more helpful, I am all ears. I am SQL at Speed basically everywhere online: Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub, and my blog is at sqlatspeed.com as well. Won't delve into my bio too much other than to say, before I got into consulting about 5 years ago, I was an enterprise DBA for several years, managed data centers, supported apps that were 24/7, 365. So I have walked the roads that we're going to talk about here. Thankfully, my phone rings very rarely, late at night now, but it used to a lot. So when when notebooks came out and I started to see what they were capable of, it kind of took me back a few years and how helpful these would have been for me. The other thing I want to highlight here is that I run the PASS local group in my hometown. I know this is not a PASS event, but the fact that you're here and taking time out at lunch or whatever to learn about stuff, that's awesome. Stick with it. Any community event, whether it's a local group, whether it's GroupBy, whether it's conferences, whatever, any way that you can volunteer, whether it's speaking or volunteering or whatever. Like I always say, the worst case is you're going to learn some things you didn't know and probably meet some people you didn't know. The best case is it can actually change your life. I mean, I've had opportunities, and even the job I have now wouldn't be possible without being involved in events like this. So the fact that you're here is awesome. Stick with it. I know stuff is really, really hard right now, but it's nice to have these outlets for us to learn stuff and meet folks. Like this slide says, I'm SQL at Speed everywhere, and that's pretty much an excuse to show this slide. So if you think the rest of the presentation is awful, but you like car racing, I'm happy to chat about that too. So yeah, I get to drive these once in a while. We had all our events canceled this spring, but fingers crossed, hope to be back to it this summer. But I'm always happy to talk your ear off about this if we don't want to talk data stuff. But we're here to talk data stuff. So what are we going to go through? So we're going to talk about what Azure Data Studio is, because I find a lot of audiences, if they've heard about it, they just kind of know it's a thing. They don't know what it is. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about our runbooks. So as DBAs, what do our runbooks look like? And maybe some processes there too. Then we're going to talk about notebooks and kind of how those can meet. And then we're going to go through some notebooks, learn how to build one, look at some basic examples of what you can do to make your life easier with these. And my hope is that you walk out of here knowing the basics where you can build one of these, but also that you have ideas in your head of, oh, well, he did this with it, and maybe I don't see that, but here's all this other stuff that I see that I want to fix. And then hopefully we'll have time at the end to show a demo that I think is really cool, that even kind of further automates all the stuff we're going to build by hand as we move through here. So Azure Data Studio, what and why? So it's important to note on this slide, as much as Microsoft makes a wonderful product most of the time, they are terrible at naming things. So keep that in mind as we walk through this. So if you're familiar with what was called SQL Operations Studio, that's basically Azure Data Studio now. It was known as SQL Operations Studio until September of 2018, where it went GA and changed its name to Azure Data Studio, and immediately confused a whole bunch of people. Because I've gotten this question every time I've done this talk, and a lot of times just when ADS just kind of comes up is, well, I'm all on-prem, so I can't use Azure Data Studio. Wrong. Remember, Microsoft not so great at naming things all the time, and I feel like this is one place where the marketing people went out. So it's Azure Data Studio. It can certainly connect to Azure. I'm going to show you that, but you can use it for all your on-prem stuff. It's not cloud only. It connects to everything. So kind of look past the name, because it's not good. So what is it for? What Microsoft says is it's a cross-platform database tool for using the Microsoft family of on-premises and cloud data platforms. It runs on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux as well. So it can connect to pretty much everything. You'll see when I pull up mine, we won't dive deeply into this because it's a pretty deep dive, but it's also a great tool to administer big data clusters. You can connect to Postgres with it. You can do a lot of cool stuff. But basically, yeah, it's to connect to your databases wherever they live. So does that mean, oh, this is the new hotness and Management Studio is out and I have to stop using it? Absolutely not. 18.5, I think, came out a few weeks ago. So there's still active development there as well. What this is in my mind, it's targeted as a pure development experience. And I know this session is targeted at DBAs, and we'll see the DBA stuff that it can do. But it seems to me like it's like Visual Studio Code for databases, basically. So you don't have a lot of the admin stuff kind of built around it that Management Studio has built in. So if it seems like it's targeted for devs, can you use it for DBA tasks? Sure, out of the box, kind of. There are some things that you have to install, and we're going to talk about these on the next slide to make it a little more DBA friendly. The nice thing is the install for this is fairly short, and the install for the stuff you kind of have to add on to it is very, very short. So how do we make that easier to do? I know nobody asked that, but I did. So let's go to the next slide. So what they have in this is something called extensions, which confusingly are actually VSIX files. So they're Visual Studio extensions by name. But they extend the experience that you have. The really cool thing is nearly all of them, it doesn't apply for every vendor, but nearly all of these are exposed through GitHub repos somewhere, even the Microsoft ones. So you can fork that. And if you think, well, I think it would be cool if it did this, it's possible to make that happen. So it really is kind of a much more open community environment than Management Studio is, just by its nature. Are extensions hard to install? Not really. So if you have ADS open, you just download it, and once the download finishes, it will say restart ADS to reload, and then you're done. It's a few seconds. If you're outside ADS, you can download the file, and then within ADS, you can open that extension file, and then it just loads it. You reload ADS, and there you go. For a lot of us, we have a management studio environment that's very particular to us. We've got SentryOne Plan Explorer. If we're fortunate enough to have, third-party monitoring stuff, we've got maybe their dashboards and extensions for that. So one kind of barrier to doing that in here is, oh, I don't have any of that, right? You actually do. So let's take a look at some of that. And I think it told me there were a couple questions. So while I flip over to ADS, let me grab a couple of those if they do indeed exist. Okay. Were there, because it was blinking at me saying there were questions. It could have been continued conversation about cheese.
No, it was not cheese related. There were two questions. I don't know how much you'll be able to answer them. One of them was Jay's asking, does it mean that Azure Data Studio is 64-bit? I feel like it's available as both. I don't remember.
To be honest, I don't know. I know I'm on a 64-bit machine, and I just did the straight download. I'm not sure if there's a 32-bit version or not. I would have to look at the download page.
I think the download directs you to 64-bit by default, and then
probably
you have to actually try for it to get to 32-bit.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Couple other questions. One just came in. If we have Visual Studio Code, why do we have ADS?
I don't know. So they do.
Sorry to interrupt. We've got a later session by Julie Cosamarno. She'd be a great person to ask a question to. And it's basically, I'll just interject that, and not being on the team or anything, but I'll just very quickly say that it comes down to all the SQL specific stuff that should come in the box. Because if Visual Studio Code were the thing, you wouldn't be able to connect to a SQL server straight out of the box. And then you'd be like, but I have to do all this extra work just to connect to SQL Server. So
yeah, it's like, why do you have Cool Ranch Doritos and Spicy Doritos? Well, it's two different demographics, but it's the same thing underneath. That's my technical answer. And then there's a question here that I don't think you're gonna have a good answer for. How can I tell if an ADS extension is communicating off premises? I think my answer is like Wireshark.
Yeah. All the ones that I've played with, there's not like a dashboard or anything that says, hey, I'm leaving your network to go look at something. So yeah, Wireshark or some sort of packet sniffer is going to be your answer.
Typically they actually have to pass a test for most kind of products to certify, but I don't know that for sure. So again, Julie's on later on today.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Easy answer.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that's cool. If you start to work on this, particularly if you start to work on extensions and things like that, the team is very active on Twitter as well. So you've got Vicky Harp, who's at Vicky Harp. You've got Julie later today at 3:30 on the other track, and I think she's MS SQL Girl, if I remember right. There's an Azure Data Studio Twitter handle that's at Azure Data Studio, I'm pretty sure. You will get responses there. It's a pretty agile team, and they understand that the success of this is people wanting to use it and getting answers to questions and things
they're
like that.
super responsive from the times that I'll mention Azure Data Studio on the internet, and I'll get a ping from them or Julie or whoever. So it's like,
But yeah, I'd say more kind of things that like design questions and things like that. Julie's probably better to handle those. I certainly have my thoughts. Nobody but me may care about most of those. So yeah, I would definitely direct those to her session. Which, like I said, I think
that's
it's
it for the questions right now. So let's keep on trucking.
Yeah. Okay. So what we've got over here on the left is extensions. So I have a few enabled because of a couple of things I'm going to show you later. The admin pack is one written by Microsoft. Gives you SQL Server agent abilities and things like that. There's a central management server extension as well. Data virtualization. This lets you play with big data clusters. And I also have Sandance. So Sandance is really cool. And I have a slide that kind of partially talks about this, but since we have it up now, I'll steal from that. Sandance gives you some, I'd say basic, but that probably doesn't give it enough credit. It gives you some data viz abilities within ADS pretty quickly. It's pretty cool stuff. I don't dive deeply into that, but I am going to show you kind of that it exists. And then you can kind of take it and run with it from there. But it's pretty easy to build some basic kind of dashboard stuff. So that's particularly handy if you're in the boat where I was for years, where I was always told we didn't have budget for any monitoring. So roll your own. And I did, but I didn't have a way to make it pretty. So it was a lot of just stuff emailing me information and all that. This would have been very, very cool. So those are some basic ones that I have. But as we roll down through here, you're going to note that there's an Idera one. There's a Microsoft one specific for Azure SQL Database Managed Instance stuff. There's Redgate SQL Search, which is really cool. There's Plan Explorer, which you should absolutely have. If you ever look at an execution plan at all, it's free. Grab it. So you see, these are some kind of vendors we all know and mostly love, I think, and that's all here. You also have some just written by folks. So it is kind of an open community that way as well. And like I said, most all of these you can go find and you can fork that code and make it do other stuff. So the way you get to that here is over on the far left side, and I just pointed at it, which nobody can see. So cool. Yeah, it's kind of the bottom of these 6 icons over here. And this is the extension marketplace. So that's a quick and dirty tour of extensions. So let's go back to the slideshow and let's get that part right. Okay. So now let's talk about Runbooks. So we're a little bit familiar with ADS right now. We kind of know what it is. We see that we have a way to kind of customize the environment to make it do what we want to do. We have some of the things that, like Plan Explorer, SQL Search, things like that, tools that we're used to, we can run those here. So we're like, cool. So let's pivot from that and let's talk about what our Runbooks are. So a lot of this borrows from my experience, and this part, I hope it's as interactive as we can make it here, because I really am curious. You know, a lot of this is stuff either I used to do or where I worked was, or places I've gone as a consultant and kind of what their processes were. So in my experience, Runbooks live sometimes in SharePoint, which can be really hard to find. Sometimes they're on a file share somewhere. And my favorite case is they're on the local system of somebody who took a multiple week vacation to a foreign country in a remote area, and then things broke. And that is a real story. That's no fun. So, you know, that's usually what I've seen is they don't live in an intuitive place. They don't always live in even a searchable place. They're just kind of out on the network somewhere, or worse yet, they're on one person's system. And if that person's out, the whole process falls down. Let's talk about formats. So I've seen them as a Word document. That's common. I've seen them as plain text notepad. Here's your steps 1 through 10. I've seen them as Excel, where you've got like a cell, and it's really ugly, but I've seen it that way. You know, it's just kind of a mishmash of stuff. And unfortunately, most places I've been as a consultant, and even places where I worked, you know, we struggled with this as well. Particularly if it was a team of more than just one, is everybody kind of had their own way. Well, I like Word, I like Excel, I like a SharePoint list. And there was not a cohesive process because there wasn't anyone able to drive that. The other problem we had is generally, especially as if you're in an environment that can be audited, or you're doing like ticket tracking or something like that, a lot of times the results of the runbook have to be shared. So the runbook, maybe it's a notepad and it's a text file, but it says take a screenshot of the results of steps 2 and 7 and send it to this list, because they have to validate that the update script or the failover script or whatever actually worked. So it's not that's not easy to share around either. So that there's that post-incident, there's pre-incident as well. Say you have somebody that comes onto the team, or you contract with a third party, after hours place, and you have to share all these, and you don't necessarily have a good way to do that. And then maybe it's like a giant email thread with a bunch of attachments and all that. I've never been to a place where the DBA runbooks were in source control ever. And this affects your overall incident response as well, because we all know, especially like I used to support a system where the SLA that was agreed to independent from the team, which is a whole other talk, was we could be fined. We basically had an allowance of about 30 minutes of downtime every quarter. And we could be fined $1,000 a minute if we exceeded that. So time was of the essence if things went sideways. And one of our data centers, the internet was dodgy. Not a great situation. So if you have to take 3 minutes to search for a runbook or to chase down an email, that might be $3,000. Not good.
Yeah, a comment just from me that's relevant. You talk about you've never seen them in source control, and half the formats you talked about do not source control well, right?
Nope.
You can't throw a Word document in Git or an Excel notebook.
Right. Yeah. So and this I think is changing rapidly, but when I got started, I had come from an app dev background, but when I was doing DBA stuff, source control wasn't at the top of my list, because generally it was speed. Oh, I got to fix this fast. So I would sometimes just hack things up. And then as the team grew, we knew we had to organize those, but there's still that I just need to do this as fast as possible, and source control slows me down. And like you said, a lot of the formats where that stuff's going to live doesn't even go into source very handily. So what is in our runbooks? A few things. So step-by-step directions, usually. Scripts to make those happen, usually. And intended results as well, especially if you have like a junior DBA running something, whether it's maintenance, whether it's an incident response thing or whatever, that's all in there. But does it contain everything you'd need? Usually not. Usually it would, maybe it would say, go download this one script from somewhere else. And, when you're trying to put your finger on those in the middle of the night, it's really hard. If it's not all in one place, you're like, oh, here's my emergency folder, and it's got this, and here's my other folder, and it's got that. And, things don't go well. So, we talked about what's in them. We talk about that they really should have everything you need to respond, but they usually don't. And then how do we keep them up to date? Is it technical people maintaining them? Oh, we now know that to respond to this kind of an incident, we need to run this script or whatever. Or worse yet, but honestly, I see this just as much as I see it maintained by the DBA team. You have non-technical people or technical writers maintaining, and hopefully you can see the air quotes, these under the guise of a business continuity plan that they have to provide to customers. That's not very useful for us, because a lot of times you don't want to show how the sausage gets made. So you're like, well, we run a script to do a thing, and the customer's like, oh, good, okay, yeah. But if a DBA pulls that, if that's the only runbook you have, you need the script that does the thing. And it's probably not going to live there because you're not going to want to expose that. So this is all things I think are good to think about as we talk about making our runbooks in whatever format they are, turning them into notebooks. And yeah, last but not least, and we'll get to notebooks here next, we can put these in source, and they play nicely in that environment. So instead of telling somebody, well, I have to go to this file share and I have to go to that, and you got to get this script from here, you just say, go to this notebook. It's got everything you need, and you can save it at the end, and the results stay. So it's a good time to talk about notebooks, unless there are other questions that have popped in.
Nope, no other questions. Aaron was nice enough to answer one for you.
Oh, cool. All right, very good. So what are notebooks? So what they are is they're Jupyter notebooks. So if you're not too familiar with those, that's okay. It split off the IPython open source project in 2014. So you have the ability, and if you've heard of these before, it's probably under like Azure Notebooks, or you're working with Databricks and running, Python or Spark or something like that. These came into my view from there before they made it to here. Azure Data Studio, and we'll look at this in a few minutes, does support multiple kernels. And basically what that is like the execution context within ADS. So it can say you're running T-SQL, you're running PowerShell, you're running Spark, PySpark, Python, all those. And we can look at that list. But even though I'm going to show a lot of T-SQL and PowerShell today, Azure Data Studio is capable of more. So how do they differ from scripts? Are they just pretty scripts? Not really. So they're laid out in cells. And we'll see that here in a couple slides. But it's laid out in cells. Those cells can either be code or text, and it supports markup for making the layout pretty. My gifts do not lie in graphic design at all, as you can probably tell from my slides. But I can handle markup and kind of know where to call somebody's attention to running this script or that script. The next thing is, where do the results come out? So let's say I've run all these cells. Where does it go? Does it write to a file? Does it write to a log somewhere? No, it actually renders right in the notebook itself. And if you save that notebook at the end, you save all of it. So you get the results there. So no more do you have to tell the overnight DBA or whoever, okay, I need you to take a screenshot of the output of this, and I need you to stuff it in a Word document and send it to this person or this list. You just save the notebook, and once you've put all your notebooks in source control, which you're definitely going to do, not along with me, you can just point people there and say, the results of this are saved here, and you can go look at them. So it'll probably make your admins a little happier that there's not email threads flying around with potentially sensitive information in it too. These are a little bit easier to keep under lock and key as long as you're not emailing them to everybody. And we'll talk about security a bit here after this slide as well. So basically, they're scripts with pictures, which can be helpful, not only as a way to persist results, but as a guide. And we're going to talk about next kind of how we can embed like web links in them and stuff. So if you're telling a DBA run this script, maybe you say, here's the Channel 9 video that explains what it does, or here's the blog post that walks you through what, why we do this, or what to do if it goes wrong, things like that. I used to work at a place where all of our night ops, no joke, their cubes were just covered in printouts of stuff. It's like, oh, when this database server says this, Matt says to run these 4 things. Nightmare. With these, you don't have to do any of that. You could print them if you want, but there's no reason to. And because you're running all the scripts right from here as well. And they're also handy for demos and examples as well. So if you're trying to teach the team a new concept or new whatever, these are great ways to do that. They're really lightweight. The documents themselves are quite small. So easy to send around and kind of provide to everybody if you're trying to teach them something new. So before we go play with markup, it blinked at me that there were questions, so I'll see if there are.
Yeah, we've got 3 questions, 1 in the Q&A and then 2 that came from the chat.
Okay.
So the 2 from the chat kind of have a similar theme about kind of governance. So the first question is, can the ADS notebooks run from a central source, or do you just save them in like a centralized source control of some sort?
So I would, obviously these aren't, because these are just kind of my own private things. I haven't put these on my GitHub yet because I'm still kind of fleshing these out. I would put them in source control and then open them in ADS and run them. So they run locally depending on what they're connected to. And I'm going to go over that here in a second.
But it's not like, say, SSRS, where you would consider having like a notebook server that you're,
No, well, especially not for what I'm talking about. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it would fit that experience well.
I don't know if you. I don't mean to muddle up your session, Matt. Are you going to cover running notebooks as SQL agent jobs?
Yes, Thunder stolen.
Oh, sorry. That's exactly. I was like, that's why I don't want to answer because if you
Yeah.
are, then that's kind of central and somewhat version control.
Right.
And stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to show people basically that there's the ability to do that, and you need the admin pack extension and kind of walk through how that works.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I guess technically that would be a remote way to run them, but you're centralizing that experiance here.
Yeah, but it's not the equivalent of a SharePoint document library where
No.
any Joe Schmo can go and be like, oh, here's my notebook.
Right.
Related question, then I think this kind of becomes moot, is like the same person's asking, are there any user permissions to kind of make it so that notebooks can be read only for specific users? And if you're throwing source control, it's like, not
yeah,
really.
so that gets tricky. There's not a really good way to, I think, flesh that out at this point. And that's kind of a good segue into this. So
Yeah,
you'll see where I have my mouse hovering over now, where it says trusted. This is me telling this notebook, yep, everything in here is cool. It's very powerful, and you'll see why in a few minutes. But I have the control to do that. So I could have a really super evil PowerShell script in here. I don't, but I could. And if I mark it trusted, it's going to run. There are still a couple security things with web links, and we'll see those here in a second. But yeah, it's important to understand these can be very powerful. So you do, from a governance perspective, you do want to think about who can access these, particularly something where we're talking about administrative emergency stuff like failovers and things like that.
Right.
Could be really scary if these get in the wrong hands, because yeah, all you got to do is do this, and it's like, cool, everything I'm running is totally fine. May or may not be.
Yeah, let's keep rolling. We've got some questions in the QA, but they feel a bit better for kind of parking a lot more near the end, I'd say.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Okay, so what we've got here is not the prettiest notebook, but what I want to do is kind of expose you to as many of the basics as I can, as quickly as I can. So you see I've got this, and I don't want to show you some of the stuff down at the bottom because it's kind of funny, I think, or at least, whatever. But yeah, you can see I've got like a pull quote here. I've got some headings, I've got some lists, but where's the code, right? So if you double click in the cell, and this is a text cell, not a code cell, here's the code. So I'll kind of bounce back and forth. So you see I've got this like a right caret. I really want you to see this. That's the pull quote down here. So it gives you a nice kind of, blue border, calls your eyes to that. Different headings. You see I've got, for, if you're my kids, they're hashtags. If you're me, they're pound signs. I'm not sure where you fall on this, but hashtag pound sign, whatever.
I think Octothorpe is the funniest answer.
Octothorpe, fair enough. I like it. Yeah, so you see you've got biggest heading here, slightly less big. So with 2, the size goes down. With 3, we've got a little bit smaller. And with 4, we've got the smallest. Now I labeled that the smallest. I've tested it. It actually goes down to 6. And I don't know if it goes beyond that now. But basically 1 through 6 are your heading sizes.
I think those correspond to the HTML header sizes, I think is why that's the 1 through 6.
Yeah, that's my understanding of markup in other places. So yeah, I kind of assume that to be the case here, but I've had people ask like, why aren't there 10? Because there's not. So how do we make text bold? Because obviously, especially with like an overnight person or something, you want their eyes to grab whatever the thing is they're really supposed to do. So we make text bold by doing 2 asterisks here, and we've got bold text right here. How do I italicize text? 1 asterisk, and we've got this here. How do I make it bold and italics? 3. So you basically take the 2, add the 1, and we have this, bold and italicize all the things. Okay, cool. So I mentioned earlier where we can link to videos and images and things like that. So here's a good example of this. And like I said, I like to talk about racing, especially now when I haven't gotten to do it in quite a while. So this is a racing video of mine. It could be a Channel 9 video, instructional video, whatever. So we've got this here. It's a pull quote. I've got the link. You can see the tag here. And so let's click on that. And I'll show you where, even though this notebook is marked trusted here, I'm going to get not an error, but it's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to open this external website? So even if I trust it, if you have external callouts, it's going to make sure that you want to go there. You can, now I don't, because I like to show this during this talk, you can configure domains as a trusted domain. So if you're directing people to like internal videos or Microsoft videos or whatever, you can configure all that here and they're not going to get this message. But I like to show that. So we click open here. Hopefully you see this changing. We've got YouTube pulling up.
If you Rickroll us, I'm going to be so mad.
No. And there you go.
Nice.
That's me. So yeah, so it's really that simple there. So now let's talk about lists, because the lists here are weird. And I want to talk about why they're weird. So you've got an ordered and an unordered list. So the ordered list is bulleted, or sorry, unordered is bulleted. How do we do that? We've got dashes there. So a dash translates to a bullet. Within here, I start a list, I end a list. So let's note this. I've got an ordered list, numbers 1, 2, and 3. I'm number 1, I'm number 2, I think. I'm definitely number 3. So why is the number 2 item not really sure that it's number 2? Because it's not, it's number 4. That seems odd, and it is odd. So when you make an ordered list, it
Wow.
basically outsmarts you. So when it sees 1, it's like, this is a numbered list. I know how to do this. And you can kind of put whatever in here, and it'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So it's a good thing to know. I've had a couple questions about that. I think the first time I gave the session, I didn't really call that out. And somebody's like, hey, I'm seeing this really weird thing with ordered lists. And yeah, that's how it works. A little strange. So
I feel like you could have an entire like mini side session on just, markdown for books, and especially when you go all the way from notebooks to books and linking between them and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do. There's kind of a thing at the end where I talk about how you can kind of nest these in an automated way, but yeah, talking about linking, you can make this really complicated.
It took me a while to figure out for my session last year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I mentioned like we can put screenshots in here and stuff. How do I do that? So we've got the tag here, ! image URL, and then we scroll down here into the render notebook, and there I am. Pretty straightforward. So, and this is silly, but it's a good time to be silly, right? So let's say I want to put a GIF in there because it's middle of the night, somebody's running this, they're in a bad mood, I want to make them laugh. So you scroll down to the end, this image is just like this, it's just called out as a GIF. And we scroll down, and it's a corgi on a skateboard, which is my wife's favorite part of this. We have a corgi. He does not skate, but she likes this part. So that's the basics of kind of how you mark these up. So any questions about that as I flip over to the slides?
There was one, it might have been a little bit niche. Someone's asking if it's possible to dynamically output, dynamically pass an output from one cell as an input for a next cell code. Yeah, that seems like a pretty specific question.
Not niche at all.
No. I haven't deeply explored that. I know in the early days, kind of parameterizing things between cells was complicated, and there are some hacky ways to do it. For this session, I haven't really pursued that further.
Gotcha.
But that's definitely something, Aaron, you might know, or I can look into it for a blog
It's
post.
one of those things where I took a couple months off for paternity leave, and I have yet to fully catch up. And I would say if you go to Azure Data Studio, you'll find on the docs page the release notes. Go look at that, because if they made that happen, I know there's something that they get the request all the time, that they would have mentioned it there. And then my other go-to is Julie's on later on today.
Yeah. You didn't make Runbooks for taking care of when the baby's crying?
Haven't figured that one out yet.
Your paternity leave was, could have been better. I will say, as a comment for me, I think it's pretty clear looking at this markup, you can see how this integrates well with source control, right? Because it's all just plain text. And so you can do line by line diffs on this kind of stuff, unlike when you're dealing with Word. There's no good way to do a merge on 2 different Word documents.
In fact, you can even do a diff inside of Azure Data Studio.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just by clicking on it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I mean, it does have.
Sorry.
Nice.
No, I actually don't show that in here, but it does have some kind of intuitive developer niceties, and that's one of them, that it's pretty easy to do native diffs and things like that. Yeah, so that's a pretty good segue into what can we do with these. So now we've seen my graphic design skills at work. And what I want to emphasize in that part is stuff's not hard to do, and it doesn't have to win an art contest. It just has to present the information in a clear way and give whatever you need to kind of help the people running these, even if it's you, what they need. So let's talk about some maintenance notebooks. And again, these are basic examples, but what I'm hoping it gives you the ability to do is kind of say, oh, well, yeah, okay, that's basic, but I can think of things in my environment that I could do, because that's really the fun, is when I get that feedback back, like, oh, we took this back and we started doing a thing to run this. So we're also going to look a little bit at Sandance, which I referred to earlier, and scheduling as well. So back to Azure Data Studio. And let's take a brief look at Sandance. All right, so I'm on my default instance, nothing fancy, 2019 RTM, and I right-click on it, and I go to Manage. And there I go. So I've got some pretty stuff here that's interactive, and it's very basic. This is what Sandance can do. Now at the end, and this is kind of a bonus if we end up having time for it, at the end, I do have the ability to kind of show you how to, so these are called Insight widgets within Azure Data Studio, and they use Sandance to show you interactive data viz stuff. You can make queries that create your own and kind of adjust that. And at the very end, I'll show that. And if I don't get to it, hopefully Julie shows it. And if she doesn't, then I'd be happy to blog about it. That's kind of something I've been playing with recently. But what I want to show you here, so when we went over extensions, I said that I have the admin pack installed. The reason I have the admin pack installed is so I can show you this. So this is SQL Server Agent, but this is the Azure Data Studio experience for it. And so we've got agent jobs, right? We all, I think, probably know what these are, and we've got some information about it. How does this play in the notebooks? So I don't have any loaded here, but what you'll note is, okay, notebooks, whatever, I have some, I don't have some. What does that have to do with SQL Agent? The new notebook job button gives you this. So it gives you the path to the notebook that you would want to run. It gives you the storage database. So if it writes information off, where is it going to store that? And you've got the handy tooltip that's also going to store job metadata, results, things like that. The execution database, which is where you're going to run it. You're going to give it a name, you're going to give it an owner, you're going to add a schedule just like you would with an agent job, and a description as well. And then via SQL Server Agent, which we all know and love, we have the ability to run one of these notebooks, which I think is pretty cool. So what kind of a notebook might you run in that? So let's go to that notebook. Okay, so what I've got here is I have a notebook. It says, for whatever reason, we're rebuilding indexes, and this is a regular maintenance thing that we send to one of our junior folks to do. So we see my basic markup, so I double click here, you've got this, not that exciting, right? Okay, so what does it say to do? So select your connection above. So that's a good time to talk about a couple things. So we want to, here's the list of kernels that I talked about earlier. There are 6 supported right now. Julie may know, she may not be able to say, I don't know. My suspicion is probably they're always working on more, but this, for a DBA, we've got SQL and PowerShell, so we're good here. You've also got Python, Spark R, Spark Scala, PySpark. And then we attach to a default instance, so you select your connection here. And so I've already done that, and I execute the T-SQL cell below. So you note as I kind of hover between these, I've got my text cell, I've got my code cell. As I hover between these, that's how I add a cell. So you may wonder, like, well, how do I make steps? It's a pretty intuitive thing. Just hover over where you think it should go, and you're going to get these. So I've got a code cell here. It's a basic index rebuild script. Not very exciting. So we run it, we get our output here. Now at this point, you see I've got this black dot here. It means the notebook has had a change, that it's unsaved. if I had to prove to my boss, yeah, I rebuilt those before I went to lunch, I can just save this and hopefully commit that change to source or email it to them or whatever. But I can do all that here. And yeah, once I save, the results here are persisted forever. So the next time I give the session, when I open this up, I'm going to have all this right here. So that's kind of basic maintenance. And then if you're interested in scheduling these, if you have something that's regular that you don't want a human to do, you want it to be scheduled, if you download the admin pack extension and you go to your database and go to manage it, like I showed, then we have this ability under SQL Server Agent to schedule a new notebook job. And then that's very familiar to any of us that have ever scheduled anything like that. Before we talk about emergencies, are there any questions that slot in well here?
Yeah, so there were two that came up. Pardon my dog. The mailman left a package. I tried to bring him in here, but he's 6 pounds of fury. So his name's Tyson. So Alex asks, are these notebooks stored in MSDB when you're publishing them?
So that's where they're stored wherever you tell it to. So that
Okay.
storage database right now, you get a choice. So, you know, what my experience is, there's still job information that stores in MSDB, but like it said, the metadata and any results that you would write off is going to be stored in whatever database you pick. And that's, that's honestly something you're going to want to create a process around.
Then the other question is, do the storage and execution databases have to be on the same server instance?
So I have not experimented with splitting them. You know what? Actually, I know you're not supposed to do that live, but I'm kind of curious here because I think what it has to rely on is the current connection you're on. So yeah, what you do, like I'm in a live connection to my default instance. I don't get a way to type and do instance /. So I think they both end up living on what you're connected to, at least to the GUI. Now, almost everything we're looking at, the settings and all that, is JSON behind the scenes. So there may be, and like I said, I haven't tried this, there may be a hacky way to do that, but I don't see a way to do it here.
As I can go ahead and interject. So what's going on behind the scenes is it stores, or at least when they first released it, they were running it via an invoke SQL command call and then storing the results. You can fan out if you want, so that you could run your, there's an invoke SQL notebook commandlet, run it against a target, and then store the results elsewhere. So you could make that your local machine, or you could actually make it a centralized server that's different from all the ones that you're collecting from, and maybe even different from the one that's actually executing the command.
Yeah, manually you have a lot of options, but like I said, through the GUI, I haven't seen a way to expand that yet. Maybe that's coming. That might be a good question for Julie, honestly. But yeah, here you can see I don't have a way to select the server. So, okay. All right, so, and I think you said there was one more?
One that I answered that was in there, but if you have, love to hear if you've got it. Do you know any places to find good example notebooks? Someone found Glenn Berry's out on GIST and wanted to know other ones.
Yes, so I've got a resources slide at the end, and I can actually show you some of those I've downloaded locally. Yeah, I'll refer later to Rob Sewell, who I'm not sure if he did GroupBy yesterday in the European track. Okay, so he talked about some of this. The thing I show at the end is basically his. I just think it's cool, and I want more people to know about it. So yeah, he worked together with a group to make Glenn's available in notebook form. And then actually the Microsoft team has produced a number to demo new features and to troubleshoot as well. And I'll show some of those at the end. So good question, and I'll answer it in a few minutes. So we talked about basic maintenance and how we could schedule those if we want to, or how we could direct somebody to run those if we want it to be like a manual maintenance thing. What if we need to respond to an emergency? So there are tons of emergencies that we can think of. I went with one that's pretty easy to control in a demo environment, and that actually happened to me. So going back to process just for a bit, I think any of us that have been a DBA for any length of time, we've had that boss or that manager or that executive who was technical in a former life, and they say, I need access to prod. And you're like, no, I don't care what your title is, no, because I'm going to get yelled at if you mess it up or if you run a query that drags something down. And they say, well, don't forget, I was a developer, I was a DBA, I was whatever I was for years. Don't worry, I'm not going to break it. And sometimes that person has a lot of power, and they just get the access even if you say, no, your boss is coming, you said, listen, just do it. This happened to me. And it was actually a wonderful boss of mine who was great, but did make this mistake, which made me really mad the couple times it happened, but gives me a decent demo for this. So it's all good. But what he did is he came from an app dev background, and he accessed our primary. We were running an always on AG. And he accessed our primary to run a query to analyze something for whatever. I don't remember what. But given his app dev background, he encased it in a transaction, begin tran, blah, blah, blah. He never ended the transaction, and he went to the coffee shop down the street to get some coffee on our primary, on a query that was one of our active tables handling dozens of requests every second. Not good. So this notebook would help fix that. And so what I've got here is both a T-SQL example and a PowerShell example as well. So let's go here. So we're done with maintenance. So let's show our T-SQL notebook. So what we've got here is we've got a nice thing for our junior DBA here to say, hey, this person, they will occasionally write a query that runs a long time and leave it in a transaction that they never close. And this is the notebook you run when you do that. So you see I've got the SQL kernel here because I'm going to run T-SQL down here. And here's the steps for that person to follow. Like I said, this isn't pretty, but I've bolded what I think is important here, is that this, you're going to take the SPID down here. You want to pull it out of the SP who's active thing, and we're going to run it in the kill cell. So on my second magic screen, I'm going to start a query that never ends, and it's running. And so let's say I've gotten some alert from monitoring or whatever, and like, oh no, this guy left, he ran this thing, okay, I've got it, okay, the thing says take it and replace this bid parameter. So okay, 59, I'm going to type that, and now I run this, command completed successfully, and what you'll see here is I killed it. It is dead. So again, basic example of how you might respond to an emergency. This is something that really happened to me, and this isn't hard to do, but I think it's an important thing to think about. If you may not have emergencies that happen consistently, but if you have some regular kind of pain points, it might be useful to put a notebook together for those, even for your own sanity, let alone others. If you want to take vacation, you want to leave all the tools in the hands of the people that are still there so you can enjoy your trip. So something like this is good. So we've done this in T-SQL, and up to now, that's kind of all we've talked about. Let's do this in PowerShell.
Pardon the dog again. I tried to placate him. Two quick things.
Yep.
One, just so you know, coming up on 5 minutes. We've got time after, so if you want to go longer than an hour, that's fine. But just want to give you a heads up. And then, I wanted to say, not only is this useful for vacation stuff, but anything where you're killing a SPID or doing anything serious, I like to think of like the 3 a.m. rule. You're on call, you get called at 3 a.m., your brain's not working properly. So to have something like this, really helps to make sure you don't kill, I don't know, SharePoint or the
valuable
ERP system. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So we already talked about Rob Sewell. He's part of a awesome group of folks that build something called DBA tools. If you're scared of PowerShell, okay. They make PowerShell easy to use. And so they're what, 300 plus commandlets now, I think, all sorts of DBA friendly stuff to do migrations, to do AG investigations, failovers, all this. I'm using a commandlet of theirs here. DBA tools is awesome. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I don't like PowerShell, it's complicated and I don't know it, DBA tools is a great kind of gateway drug into being a hardcore PowerShell person, but you never have to go beyond what they've written. So it's an awesome group of folks. I have a link to that on the resource slide as well, but I am using one of theirs here. So same thing. I've got instructions here, but you'll notice my kernel's PowerShell instead of SQL. I'm running my query that never ends. I'm like, okay, I got to execute the first code cell. It says to do this. I got it. Okay, SPID is 67. And I do that down here and I run the query and run the second thing. And what I don't like about this, so if the PowerShell fails, you'll know, it'll give an error, but you don't get like a success thing natively. But I can prove over here, once again, it died. So that is showing how to run T-SQL and PowerShell. And one thing that's kind of interesting here is I've got a question before, can you run T-SQL and PowerShell in the same notebook? The answer is, kind of. So you see I've got some very basic T-SQL here, and I'm running a SQL kernel. So we're running select that version, 2019 RTM, blah, blah, blah. I have what looks like a web link down here, right? So if I go to view terminal, and you can see where I tested this earlier and it works. So if it fails this time, I have proof. But anyway, if I go to view terminal and I click this web link, I've just run PowerShell inside a T-SQL notebook. So it's a little bit hacky, but if you have that need where you're like, all right, I want to run some T-SQL and then I want to run some PowerShell to expedite something or confirm something or whatever, you have the ability to do that here. And I can make these notebooks available as well, so you can see that behind the scenes. Let's flip back to the slides. And I was going to go a little over the hour, so I'd say I've probably got about 7-8 minutes left, but we'll get things rolling.
Sounds good.
Okay, so what are some real world scenarios for this? So this first bullet point, I want to call your attention to this, and it's this is nothing that I came up with, but I thought this was fantastic. So I want to say this was about 6 weeks ago. Jess Pomfret, who used to live here in the States in Ohio and has now moved back to England, had this awesome post on SQL Server Central about automating your morning checklist of backups, DBCC checks, fail jobs, all those sorts of things via a notebook and using DBA tools to do it as well. I didn't come up with any of that. I didn't write it. But if you are, as I was for many years, you've got a checklist of stuff you have to do and you're kind of midstream of automating that and making it easier for you or somebody else to do, a lot of the hard work's been done right there. Please go read that post. The link is in the resource slides, and it's a wonderful post. Lots of good information and lots of stuff you can just pull out and run.
Yeah, she was also on the Europe GroupBy yesterday.
Yeah, I am not a PowerShell whiz by any stretch, but both Jess and Rob are awesome. And so, yeah, I have to thank them for basically letting me call them out in this and pointing out that they do awesome stuff. You can also do this to report on database features as well. So if you need to look at like uptime and things like that, and you're in an environment where you do kind of have to roll your own maintenance and uptime reporting and things like that, the databases portion of dbatools.io/commands, it's a good way to kind of automate that. You could present that in the PowerShell notebook. And then when your boss comes to you and says, I need proof that blah, blah, blah has been up this long, you can just kind of say, yeah, just go in source control, look at this notebook, there it is. Similarly for homegrown performance reports and things like that. I used to have some where I wrote a bunch of T-SQL and used database mail to send to a list, like here's our transaction speed, batches per second, all those sorts of things. But it was really cumbersome to kind of maintain those, and they weren't very pretty. They were full of information, but they were ugly. Notebooks are another nice way that they may not win any sort of an art contest, but they're going to present the information in a readable, consumable way. Another thing is, and I've certainly had this experience, I think most have, where maybe you need to run some sort of report, and because of the development time on the application team itself, they're like, well, really this report's just a query. We don't have time to do all the cosmetic stuff and all that, so just ask the DBAs to do it. And maybe it sends an email out to somebody, and you know, but you're spending all this time trying to get like HTML jammed into the database mail code to make it pretty. Just make a notebook, schedule it. Just like we showed earlier, and then you can convey a lot of those reports that way. So if the dev team pushes that work off on you, you can still do it, and you can do it in a way that's prettier and easier than the way you used to do it. So one more thing before we wrap up with a handful of questions is this. So this is cool, and this is something I think Rob showed it at his notebooks talk at Summit last year, and I asked him if I could show this and talk about how awesome he and others are, and he said I could. So here it is. And basically what it is this, is let's say you have a series of notebooks, like you have, as I think most of us would, if you're running like an always on AG or something where you need the ability to fail your environment back and forth. You probably have a series of things you run to do that. You're gonna have, you know, a set of like always on T-SQL, and then you're gonna have a set of scripts probably to show that things are running and that data is once again moving and all those sorts of things. And you don't want to have to rebuild those every time. And you'd kind of like those to be a template where somebody can just go to a notebook and say, okay, generate me this template really quickly, and I will work on it from there. And so that's what this is. So the work that goes into this, and the reason I linked to Rob's blog here is he does a wonderful job of explaining not only the work that he put into it, but the work that others put into it to kind of get it over the line. Definitely go check this out, read the notebook, read his story behind it, and tweet it to folks that helped us get there, because this is really, really cool. And that's why I show it, just because I didn't know it existed before then, and so I want people that come to my session to know it exists here. So what would that template incident response kind of look like? So what I've got here is something called, and let's turn our terminal view off, or just the X. So what I've got here, and the code behind this is, like I said, fairly complicated. And so I'll leave you, if you're interested in that kind of a deep dive, go to Rob's site and check it out there. But what I have here is, for my template, you know, let's say I want the PowerShell and T-SQL I showed earlier. I want that notebook, but I want it with a timestamp on it. I want the person that generated it, so I know, like, yeah, this DBA handled this problem. They generated the incident response template at this time, and then they have something that they can put in source control or send to me or whatever, that like, yeah, at 3 a.m. I generated this, I ran it, and it's done. So what you get when you run these is basically this. So I ran something to generate the PowerShell emergency notebook, and there it is. So I have this in an output folder, and it's sample emergency notebook PowerShell. I've got a very ugly timestamp on it, and it's got my name. So then this is what I can use as my kind of incident response template, that yes, I did this. And not to go too deep into the way that works, but the way it's put together is basically you would have a list of notebooks that lives in the same folder as your notebook of notebooks, or whatever you would want to call it, template generator, something like that. And then that's going to give you links to basically run all these. And let's go back here. And if I had done run cells, I would have a complete list of whatever is here. That's a crude and basic way of showing what they've done, but it's really cool. And so if you do need to put together those templates and things like that, definitely check out Rob's site and thank them for their work, because it's pretty awesome. So let's wrap this up, shall we? Okay. This was me. Like I said, thanks for hanging out. This is fun. I really enjoy this topic. If you have questions that we're not going to be able to get to, or questions that you want somebody on the team to answer, Julie's session is at 3:30 Eastern on the development track. Definitely invite you to check that out. It's a good chance I might be hanging out in there as well. If you have follow-ups, feel free to email me. I'll answer as I can. Like I said, if you have feedback, feel free to send it to me there. If you want to put me on blast on Twitter, that's fine. But really, any way you want to follow up to ask more, or kind of let me know how it went, happy to do that. The resource slide I mentioned is here, and we do have the ability to upload these slides. I do want to call out a couple things we talked about earlier. So we've got the Microsoft sample notebooks for 2019 features. Those can be found here. The artists formerly known as the Tiger team put their troubleshooting notebooks out here, and those are very cool. Obviously got some links from Rob and Jess here, and generic link to DBA tools, PowerShell commandlets.